Hi, I'm Jessica, and when I'm not drinking all the coffee, watching Razorback sports, or hanging out with my family of boys, it's my passion to help elementary music teachers just like you find your unique teaching style. My goal with this podcast is to share helpful tips, strategies, and to give you the motivation you need to gain momentum in your teaching so you can continue being the music teacher rock star you already are. Well, welcome to episode 30. I cannot believe we are at 30 episodes in, you guys. Oh my goodness. And not only that, it is 2019. I am recording this episode today on January the 1st, so Happy New Year. I also just celebrated my air quotes 21st birthday, just kidding, on New Year's Eve. And so it's always a crazy time of year over here with, the holidays, Christmas, and then my birthday, and then the New Year's. And I took a brief hiatus from any kind of website work. I was kind of quiet on social media for a while. I haven't even recorded a podcast episode since before Christmas, and my blog has kind of taken a backseat. But I think that's okay sometimes to just take a breather and take a break from anything in your life. And we've talked about self-care a lot, and I kind of needed some of that. And so I am so ready for 2019 and to jump back in feet first and both feet ready to go. And I'm so excited for this year. And so without further ado, this episode is going to be my 5 favorite podcast episodes from 2018. I cannot wait to share the 5 I picked because it was very hard to pick just 5. But I picked 5 of my favorites, and I'm going to share why they're my favorites and tell you which episodes they are so you can go back and take a listen if you have not heard them yet. My desire with this podcast and my blog and any of my social media outlets is to always share my experience, my life, and to help other music teachers through my experiences and through some sound advice that I share with you. I'm pretty much an open book. Of course, I don't tell you every single detail of my life, but on my Instagram especially, it used to be, I used to have 2 Instagram accounts, by the way. I used to have one for The Domestic Musician, and I used to have one for Jessica Peresta, which is my name. And I decided ain't nobody got time for that. I decided to just combine them into one. So if you follow me on Instagram, you're going to see a combination of music education. I always share when I have a new blog post or podcast episode in my Instagram stories, which is where I'm the most active. And then you'll see me posting a lot of pictures of my family. So anyways, that was kind of a little bunny trail, which I go on a lot of those. If you're new here, you'll notice that about me. But anyways, moving on. So I wanted to say that I was talking about how I'm an open book. And if you followed me for any length of time, whether it's just been listening to this podcast even, I really want to share my heart. I really don't hold back very much. And my friends always tell me that. They're like, you are one of those people who just, you know what people are thinking, you just kind of like say it. And it's the truth. I do have filters, you guys, but I just want to always share with you and be honest and open about teaching and about strategies that will really work for you. And so I hope you can hear that as I'm speaking, that I'm really sharing my heart and I'm really trying to share as much advice with you as I can. This podcast is a little bit different than some because it basically is just me talking. And so you'll notice there's different types of podcasts and they're all amazing. And I follow a lot of them. But there's some that do a lot of interviews with amazing people. And then there's some like mine where there is just the podcaster talking. And so that with this podcast I started it as a way, I had my blog first, but I wanted a way for people to be able to hear me talk and not just read my words because I'm passionate about both. I am also passionate about Facebook. I do Facebook Lives too, but I wanted a way for me to, if I have something I want to share, I just wanted to jump on and be able to share it without sometimes taking the time to write it down, if that makes sense. So you can always kind of hear someone's voice better when they're talking than when you're just reading words. If I can relate it back to when you get, on the phone, for instance. Have you ever gotten a text message and then you read it and you're like, is that really what they meant? And then when you talk to the person, then you're like, oh, okay, I thought you meant this. It's just easier sometimes to hear someone's voice than to just read what they're saying, is what I'm trying to say. So anyways, moving on, my goal has always been to help any elementary music teacher who needs help getting started or continuing in their teaching careers. So going forward in 2019, I have so many new topics I can't wait to talk about, and I'm excited to have you come along on this journey with me. I appreciate in 2018 every single person who's listened to any of the episodes and the feedback I've received. I just appreciate it so very much. It means the world to me that you would take the time to listen. And sometimes I get Instagram direct messages. People reach out to me on Facebook. I've gotten emails, and I just appreciate every single one of you who've taken the time to reach out. And even if you haven't and you're just taking a listen, that's so much appreciated too. In order to be able to reach even more teachers, I'd appreciate if you would leave me a review on iTunes. Just click on the Domestic Musicians Music Education Podcast, scroll down, and you can leave a rating. And then below that, you can click write a review. And I would love that. It's a way for other music teachers to find the podcast as well. So we're going to move right along. In this episode, like I said, I went through the podcast from 2018 and picked out my top 5 favorite episodes. It was really hard to pick just 5 because every single episode is something I'm passionate about. And so I really thought through, okay, what are 5 that really stand out to me? And honestly, these are also 5 that got the most listens, by the way, or downloads. And maybe you're new here, and if you are, I'm so glad to have you here and that you found this podcast, and I hope you find encouragement and advice to help you in your own classroom. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. My first episode I want to share, that was one of my favorites from 2018, was episode 2. We're going all the way back to episode 2, and how to teach music in a low-income school. So if you've heard any part of my journey, my teaching career started a little crazy. I'm not going to lie to you. I graduated in the middle of the school year. Okay, let's hold on a minute. Let's go back. I graduated in December and I started my teaching career in the middle of the school year is what I meant to say. So I graduated in December, started my first teaching job in January. But that wasn't all. My first school had not had music at the school for 7 years. And on top of that, they had no curriculum or instruments for me to use. The kids just had art. They had PE, but I'm talking about in the arts department, they just had art. I'm not going to lie. Overwhelmed is not even a word. I can use to express what it was like. It was a low-income school, obviously, hence the episode, how to teach music in a low-income school. But I talk about, in this episode, my experience teaching at a low-income school, the ups and downs from it. Every school, no matter what demographic your students are, what kind of school district you're in, if you're at a private or public school, every school is going to have its challenges and strengths that come right along with teaching at that school. In this episode, I just share my experience with teaching at a low-income school and what it was like. And why I loved it. I mean, I miss those kids every single day because I developed such a great relationship with them. And did it come right away? Oh, no. It was very hard. I had fights, like physical fights in my classroom. And I had, things I don't want to go into detail, but like major things happened to these kids, like just hard family lives. And so it was very hard some days to even just teach music because, there was just some hard stuff going on all the time at this school, but I absolutely loved it. And so I share my experience. I share about what I did when I had no curriculum. And even if you're not at a low-income school, but you're maybe at a school that doesn't have curriculum or you don't know what to teach with because you walked in and maybe you just have some old textbooks, I kind of give some advice about how I went along with that. And then also about how I earned my students' trust and how I had to do that before I even started teaching. And so maybe this is you and you're listening to this right now and you're like, all right, I'm kind of at a tough school. Maybe it's not exactly like what I talked about my experience was like, but maybe you feel frustrated and you're kind of like, I just need some help. Then listen to this this episode 2, to give you some helpful advice so you can feel positive and feel encouraged moving forward through the rest of the school year even, or maybe it's a school you're going to be starting at next year. Okay, so the next one I want to share is episode 5. I talked about classroom management in the elementary music classroom. So I wanted to share this episode because, like I shared my experience of teaching at a low-income school, obviously I knew, along with earning my students' trust and before I could teach music, I needed to have classroom management in place. I didn't want to go in like a drill sergeant, but at the same time, I knew, you know what, these kids need to know there's some rules in here before they just, come in and think there just had to be classroom management in place is what I'm trying to say, along with procedures. And so classroom management is something that's not really what you call fun to talk about, but is so important. And once it's implemented in your classroom, you'll notice how much smoother your teaching goes and how much, if you try to teach lessons, maybe you have those couple students who are acting up, then you have classroom management in place for how to deal with that. And you're able to move right along, and it doesn't take up a whole class time. It just takes up maybe 1 or 2 minutes. And so in this episode, I talk about strategies that I used and what really worked for me, even in the toughest of school environments, and how everything, like I said, just seems to run smoother and you'll actually be able to teach music instead of feeling like you're a babysitter just trying to control the chaos. And so it took me a good year or two to find a classroom management system that actually worked. And I want to encourage you that if maybe you're trying something this school year and you feel like you're literally just frustrated all the time, feel like you're hitting your head on the wall because you're just constantly frustrated, that you feel like you're just constantly telling your students to please stop, please get it together, please stop talking, please pay attention, please, then listen to this episode. And one of the most encouraging pieces of advice I can give is stay consistent with your students. Don't give up. If classroom management is something you're struggling with, take a listen to this episode. And then also, I wanted to tell you in the show notes, I'm also going to include a link to my top 10 blog post from this school year, from 2018, not this school year, but from 2018. And inside of that blog post, you'll see a link to one of the blog posts I wrote about classroom management. Inside that blog post, I'm going to link to. Okay. All right. So the next episode I want to share, that was one of my favorites from this year, was episode 12, which is how you can feel successful teaching elementary music, no matter what school you're at. Maybe you're a brand new teacher right out of college. Maybe you're an experienced musician, but teaching elementary music is new to you. Maybe you've only taught private lessons, but teaching in a classroom is totally different ballgame. Maybe you're coming from secondary music. So maybe you've said multiple times this school year, I do not feel successful. I feel like I am not doing a good job. I feel frustrated. I feel like I'm not cut out for this. Y'all, I'm over here silently raising my hand because those are all phrases I've said several times. But in this episode, I talk about how you can walk into your classroom with joy each day. Not frustration, but joy. Excited to be there, happy, feeling like you are meant to do this because you are, okay? You're bombarded with so much thrown at you on each and every single given day, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed and frustrated. In this episode, I shared 3 strategies that help you feel successful in your teaching career, that helped me when I was teaching elementary music. Is every day perfect? Of course it's not. But this episode will remind you why you wanted to be a music teacher and how to keep showing up every day and keep going. Remember, your main priority is to teach music and to feel successful while doing it. Not just to show up and go through the motions, but to feel like a successful music teacher. Because when you feel like you're successfully teaching music, your students will feed off of that. And they'll feel like they're excited to come to your class because you're excited to be there. So give yourself a listen to episode 12 if you're needing some encouragement to keep going and to keep doing what you're doing, okay? And then number 4, episode 19 is my 4th one I want to share. Ways to beat imposter syndrome as a music teacher. Oh my goodness, you guys. How many of you feel like you are comparing yourself to other music teachers around you? Maybe you feel like you're not teaching as good as them, or you don't have as good classroom management as them, or maybe your classroom doesn't have as many motivational posters, or maybe you feel like you haven't taken as many Orphan Kodály levels. Because do you feel like sometimes like it's a contest? I used to feel that way. This teacher over here is like, I've taken all 3 Orphan Kodály levels, and you're sitting there like, so I haven't, and you just feel like you can't measure up. It's so hard. So stop it right now. Okay. I'm giving you permission to stop it right now. Stop comparing yourself. Don't worry about what other people around you are doing. Of course, form relationships. That's not what I'm trying to say. Form relationships with other teachers. Get advice from them. Get feedback from them. Email those mentor teachers in your district that, have really spoken to you, or your mentor teacher from college, or your mentor teacher from your first year teaching, or maybe this is your first year teaching, and ask questions. But what I mean is don't compare, because one of my favorite phrases I like to say is don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle, because where they are now is not where they were a few years ago. We talked about how it took me a couple of years to get my classroom management system the way I wanted it to be. If someone had, maybe a new teacher was looking at the way my classroom management system was set up, and they're like, oh my gosh, how is she doing that? I cannot believe she's that. If they had looked at my first year teaching, they would have been like, oh my gosh, wow, I am doing a way better job than Jessica is, okay? But don't compare yourself. And that's one thing I was really good about not doing, because I kind of just stayed in my lane. If I compared my classroom to other teachers who had 105 Orff instruments, I would have cried because I had nothing. Okay, I didn't have money even in my budget to buy anything. So don't compare yourself. If you need a friendly reminder about why you matter as a teacher and some positive words of encouragement, this is your episode to keep being you. Okay. And then my last episode I want to share is it's a twofer, because episodes 24 and 25 were a part 1 and 2 series about ways to simplify lesson planning. Okay, so often, I feel like music teachers especially, this was me, you overcomplicate the lesson planning process. Every principal, school, and district has different requirements when it comes to lesson planning, yet there are ways to simplify it. So for me, I wanted to fit in all the things all the time. I wanted to, okay, I'm going to do 4 songs with this grade, and then 5 with this grade, and then we're going to do this activity, this dance, this instrument activity. No, it gets so stressful. And so listen to these 2 episodes, 24 and 25, for how to simplify the lesson planning process. And you'll feel like, okay, I don't have to do all the things. It's okay to not get to every single activity that I have written down, that I've learned at every single workshop that I have over here in all these binders. It's okay. It's okay to not get to it all. Your main goal is to teach music, okay? So there are so many other episodes I could have mentioned that could have made this list, but I chose these 5 carefully because I really feel like they could help someone listening today. And like I said, along with these 5 podcast episodes, look at the link in the show notes, because I'm going to link to a blog post I just wrote about my top 10 favorite blog posts from 2018. And I hope you've had as much fun listening to this podcast this year as I've had fun recording it. I can't wait to continue sharing even more episodes in 2019. It's going to be such a great year, and I cannot wait to continue coming on here every single week and sharing new podcast episodes that you can use to apply to your classroom. All right, you guys, I will talk to you soon. Have an amazing beginning of your 2019. Bye. Thank you so much for listening in to the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, I would love for you to review the show and leave a rating on iTunes. To find out more about how I can help you gain momentum in your elementary music teaching career, head to thedomesticmusician.com, where you'll find free downloads, courses, the blog, and so much more. Continue teaching music and never doubt the impact you're making each and every day in the lives of your students.